And welcome back, everybody. Hey, Sandra, I see you in there. This is a special week because now, for the fourth week in a row, our weekly Wisdom Wednesday webinar series is actually bum 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 on Wednesday. There were a couple weeks there where we they weren't on Wednesday for different reasons, but we are back to our normally scheduled program for a whole month now. Back here with another exciting and hopefully engaging webinar for you here at CommonTime. We do these as part of our education and outreach effort to just help support our community. You know, our goals here at CommonTime, which is your number one purpose-built home for arts booking, whether you're looking for theater and drama artists or musicians or dancers or visual artists, you can book them and have them in your home, in your schools, at your arts organizations for live performances, webinars, workshops, lessons with students, all of that type of stuff. As always, head over to commontime.online for all of the amazing info and to find out the opportunities about that. But I digress. Little housekeeping. On February 20th, we are partnering with the Toronto Opera Festival to bring you a live stream performance of Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. This is on February 20th. You can get tickets to that live stream right up here on the Arts Organizations tab for those of you who are with me here in this webinar. And let's intro it. Today, we're going to be talking about a topic that became important to me during the pandemic, and this is a topic that I hope will be important to a lot of you. And I'm speaking here to our music educators. We're talking about some of my favorite digital tools for the music room. Just a couple sips of water there. And these are digital tools that I like because they can be helpful not only to your students to provide them with a more engaging music experience, but they can also be used by you during in-person or virtual classes to kind of enhance your experience and your interaction with the students as well. If you are interested in catching up with any of the previous Wisdom Wednesdays, I was just talking to the team, and I think this is our 16th or 17th consecutive Wisdom Wednesday, except for a little break during the Christmas and that winter holiday season. You can catch these on the blog at commontime.online on the blog page. So once again, a little intro. We're going to be talking about some of my favorite digital tools that can be used in the music room. We're going to talk about why we need them and how we can incorporate them into in-person learning and, of course, with virtual learning. So to get started, the first digital tool that I love to use is Drumbit.app. If you go on Google and just type in Drumbit, this will immediately come up. If you type in drumbit.app, it will also immediately come up. This is a really, really cool and useful tool that I love using for both in-person and online learning. So let's start with online learning. On the surface, it's just a drum machine. Let me make sure my sound is shared so that you can hear all the cool, I almost said noise, the sounds that we're going to be making here. On the surface, it's just a drum machine. You know, you can click in the buttons here. Okay. For a more curricular note, it's already preset in 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, 4. And each of those 4 beats is subdivided into 16th notes. Okay. And starting with your online learning, I love using this one because it gives the students a cool music tech experience. You can use this to teach rhythms. I've been using this for a while now to teach rhythms, as your students can compose and they can mimic and they can dictate any eighth note, quarter note, half note, whole note, or 16th note rhythm with this. But the coolest feature is that when you play something like this, your students, and you share your sound, your students are hearing this in real time. So they're hearing this exactly as you're hearing it. And if you perform something along with this, they're going to hear your voice and this sound coming through the computer at the same time, even if there's a latency issue. The sound that they hear and the sound you're hearing and making might be delayed, but even if it's delayed by a second, they hear it going straight through. Implications. If you are having your students actually playing or singing while they're on digital, on online learning, they can hear this sound coming through their screen and perform with you. This works best if the students are on mute or if you only have one student unmuted at a time, because once you get all those people performing into their microphones, you do get a latency issue that it's hard to avoid just because of the nature of the internet. But using a tool like this helps you simulate playing together, because all the students can hear this steady beat. They can perform with that steady beat. You can listen to one student at a time with the rest of them on mute, and they can all play along. Now, when that student is unmuted, it can get a little bit difficult for the other students if there is like a connection issue where the sound that they're hearing from that student may not be perfectly in line with this sound. But when the students are muted, it's definitely a great way for them to simulate playing together. They will see themselves all playing together if their cameras are on, and they will be playing at the same time because they're following this steady beat. So moving to some in-person implications of this, like I said, you can have your students compose any quarter note, eighth note, or 16th note rhythms here in a loop. I have used this in primary and even secondary general music classes where I'm trying to introduce the idea of people playing different parts. When we're playing drums, for example, hand drums, and we're not in unison, you can set up simple rhythms like this, for example. So we have an easy, a simple 3-part rhythm here, and it gives your students that are performing a really cool visual, and it helps them see only their part and play their part. So in the lower primary grades, that's been a great implication or application of this program. I'm a band director, and as a band director, I love using this tool as my metronome. You know, that same old click, 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 click. It gets boring, and a lot of teachers like to use music, especially when you're talking with percussion. I also do a lot of drumline. When you're teaching drumline, people like to use music with a steady beat. But you know, you don't want to have a playlist for every single tempo that you might want to warm up at. But using Drumbit, you can create a very simple, steady beat, and you can do this all quickly. And you can quickly and easily change the tempo. Maybe that's too fast for what we're working on. And one thing that I've had a lot of success with is a lot of our music teachers out there and other arts teachers as well have jobs in their classroom where maybe there's a team of students who's responsible for setting up the chairs. There's a team of students who's responsible for getting the stands. I had a team of students that was responsible for making our steady beat. And sometimes, especially with the younger students, they get really random with it and they may give you something like this. And then I would just usually edit it by adding something. Bum, 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 bum. By adding something on the downbeat to make it better. 1, 2, ready, go. That's me pretending to do long tones. I hope I sounded good to everyone out there. Drumbit. So, applications. Students can compose rhythms. Students can mimic rhythms that you're teaching them using this. This could be your metronome or your steady beat in classes. You can assign a student to provide your classes with this steady beat. You can use a steady beat like this to share your sound when you're in a digital playing session to simulate playing together. You give them this steady beat, all the students can play. And they could do that. You can even have students when they're playing at home, you can have them follow along to this steady beat and simulate that they're playing with you. All types of different applications. And one thing I love about this is that it's visual. And when you're sharing this visual more than anything is coming through in real time. And you can actually have one student unmute themselves while performing with a steady beat. You can have the other students turn their volume down so that they're not distracted by the potential latency. And you can actually hear and give feedback to the one student playing while the other students are able to still simulate playing together through the visual aspect of this. I'll even let you look at it. You can still see the clicks going, and that can give you that steady beat as well, while you're also able to listen and give feedback to the one student who is playing, while the other students have turned down their volume and are able to visually follow along with this. So using a steady beat tool like this gives you a great opportunity for your online learners to still play as a group. They can still see each other as a group, and they can still simulate that aspect of playing together. All right, that was Drumbit. I love using Drumbit. Here is another tool that I use often in my classes that has great applications for in-person and digital learning scenarios, and that is called Chrome Music Lab. A lot of you have heard of this. Chrome Music Lab is kind of a library of these different sound games, and we can just go through them one by one, and I'll tell you what I love about them the most. So this first one here, the shared piano. Okay. And the cool thing about this is that it's a keyboard. You can change the sounds of it. It has strings. It has a really cool visual drum machine. Wherever you want, kind of makes a different sound. Marimba. Okay, but I'll leave it on piano for now. So this is a really great activity just to let your students click around on, let them look at the colors. You can hold down your cursor and gliss on it. And the reason it's called shared piano is because you can actually copy this room link, copy link, and you can paste that into a browser and have your students join in on the same link. So now if we go here, you see now there's two people in the link. There's two people, and they can both access this in real time. they can both access this in real time. So I'm going to share my screen a different way so that you can see it a little bit better. So now here I'm the frog, and here I'm the dog. Okay, implications for digital learning. For our primary music teachers out there, when you're teaching the Bourdon, for example, okay, you can share your screen and you can use the annotations to show your students, here is C next to the 2, and here is G. Can you find all the C's and G's, and then you'll let them find them? They'll find all the C's and G's. Okay, and then you can say, remember our ORF keyboards? Can you find this note, this C? And can you maybe figure out the pentatonic scale if you start right here? And you can go. You can maybe even show some other images to kind of help them visualize the keyboard and what notes they're supposed to be playing. Then when you get 2 students on the same piano, you can have them use, maybe create a rhythm with like a broken Bourdon. And then your other student can improvise on that. Also, if you're teaching ORF and your students are doing call and response, you can have them do that. So you can have your students improvising with your Bourdon. You can have your students doing call and response improvisations with this on this shared piano. So I really, really like that tool. Let's go back. Look at the next one. Songmaker, I'm going to save for last. Rhythm, this is a really cool one. You can have your students, and this works for secondary settings and primary settings. The click response is pretty good. And you can actually have your students mimic rhythms. Like if you say ta, ti, 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 ta. You can use that there. You can have your students compose rhythms here and they play. It's just a virtual drum. I've also used this anytime I've done a hand drum activity where I've been in a blended situation. I've given the students the opportunity to use this and drum along with us as best they can. Not always perfect, but it gives them an opportunity. And especially when you're in blended learning, you can even have those students unmute themselves if you've just got a couple students, or keep them muted with the camera on. You can have them even share their screen with the camera so that you can see that they're participating. Also, you can use this as a steady beat like with Drumbit, but I don't use this one as much. This is a spectrogram, and it shows different instruments with this cool visual that kind of outlines their frequency. And this can be a cool tool for demonstrating the harmonic series in brass, even seeing those different frequencies that come out with any given note. Sound waves. It gives you a cool visual of what the sound waves look like when you're playing different pitches for high and low frequencies. In primary grades, whenever we've introduced how sound works, this is a great visual. And then when you're dealing with secondary students that are maybe playing instruments and you're talking about intonation, this is a great visual to show. When we're not playing in tune, sounds make those waves. And when those waves aren't together is when you get those clashes and you hear that when that intonation is bad. And you can actually help students visualize this. Like when we're playing this F sharp, this is what the wave looks like. But if your note is flat and you're closer to F, they're not going to line up because that frequency is not the same. So that's a great visual. All of these are really cool tools. If you ever give your students, especially in digital learning, any free time or any time just to be provoked, being able to use these different tools is a really cool concept that allows them to just experiment. Arpeggios. So with this one, you can select A minor, for example, and you can play them. And you can switch to D. So here's some applications for online and in-person learning. If you are ever teaching the circle of fifths, you can use this to demonstrate it because it gives it to you in the circle of fifths. So if you're learning that, you can have them start on G. That's the, when it plays it block here, is on that Alberti bass. That's your straight arpeggio. That's where it plays it harmonically. And then you can have them switch to G. And then D. A. E. So implications for primary and secondary. You can have your secondary students that are learning arpeggios play along with this. You could quiz them and have them identify the notes in this chord. You can introduce your primary students to exactly what an arpeggio is. I also love this for teaching composition at both levels. You can teach your students about that topic of what a chord progression is, for example. Then you can have them make their own chord progressions and then have them test them out. Just a really cool tool to help students visualize what arpeggios are like. This one's called Kandinsky. I don't use this one as much, but you can draw on it and it kind of assigns sounds to them. Another great experimental tool, especially for digital learning, I like it. Voice spinner. You can record your voice. Stop it.
You can record your voice.
You can record your voice. You can record. And then it can play it in reverse. Yeah, so that's a really cool tool to have your students recording themselves. Digital learning implications, especially in the secondary. Finding ways for your students to record themselves and hear it back is a very useful tool since you're not playing together to keep them playing. You can have them record measure 1 through 4 with the trumpets and then have them play it back. And have them change the pitch and experiment with it. Have them reverse it and see what it sounds like. At the primary level, this works the same. It's just it's a voice recorder with the added effects. I'm going to skip the rest of these, but feel free to check out Chrome Music Lab and go over to Songmaker. I love this for in-person learning and digital learning when teaching solfege. So you can go into the settings here, change the range to 1 octave. It's starting on C. And you can introduce do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and have it play through. I often have students sing these pitches, and then you can have them stomp on the circles or play drums on the circles. You can have them snap their fingers on the triangles. Wow, and you can have them stomp on the circles, pat their chest on the triangles, do the hand signals. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's an awesome coordination tool that's like swinging with two bats. Likewise, with your secondary students, if you're teaching instrumental music, you can use this to introduce scales when they're learning scales and have them simply play along to this track that also is giving them that visual of the scale going up, especially when you have young music readers that are maybe struggling to read music. This is a good way to help them play scales with a steady beat. And then you can change the pitch. Maybe you weren't working on concert B flat. Okay, maybe you're working on concert F. Now, and also with all students, when you're working on ear training, let's say once you've established the key of concert F and they know these are the notes and they're playing along, I start making up random melodies. Like you can say, then you let them hear it. Okay, and then you try to get them playing by ear using this because it's giving you the visual tool that music represents and is giving you that audible tool as well. I also use this with primary age students and in-person and online learning and have them singing along. This, because it gives a visual, you can have students singing along with this on online learning with the shared sound, playing along with it. Then you can start to unmute students, have the other students turn their volume down. They're still getting the visual cue of when to sing, and you and them get to hear their classmates. So Songmaker, I love for digital and in-person learning. Hopefully you can see all the possibilities with that. So coming back to here, the next one I want to talk about with you is called Soundtrap. Soundtrap is pretty popular. It's very possible that a lot of you are familiar with Soundtrap. So what Soundtrap is a digital audio workstation. You've got to make an account, but it's free for the trial, and the trial is pretty extensive and it's timeless. So you can always use it, your students can. This simply, you can add a track, you can add a microphone and have your students record their voice. It gives you this nice clicker. Testing, 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 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2. And play it back. Testing, 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 1, 2, 3, testing, testing, 1, 2. You can have your students recording themselves. I like using a DAW in my secondary classes in person because you can record the students having them play. And even you can give it a metronome. Let's say you're going at 120 and it'll give them a count off. Playing your part, we're playing our part, so Mr. Skillern can listen to us. And then you can play it right back. Playing your part, we're playing our part, so Mr. Skillern can listen to us. And then you can go right back and say, oh, what is this? Mr. Skillern can. What is that again? Oh, can we change the way we're saying our vowels, make it a tall vowel? Mr. Skillern can. And you can use this as an in-person rehearsal tool with your secondary ensembles to get them listening, get them playing without you in front of them, just letting them play, giving you the freedom and space to walk around. You can have them listen back to it so they can hear themselves. And this can be a lot easier than maybe using some of the other recording setups that you might be using. Likewise, students can use this to record themselves either in person or at home. You can have them playing their part while you're using your steady beat and they're at home singing, but at the same time, they can be recording themselves. Then you can say, Tim, why don't you share your sound for us and play what you just recorded? That's a good way during online learning to kind of ensure that they're actually participating. I've used this to do some cool things with teaching form because you have a loop library here. And let's just put this loop here, for example. Okay. Then that's your A section. Then you can have them input a B section. And then back, of course, to our A section. I think this was what I had. Oops, that's not what I had. We had this one. And this is something that you can use to demonstrate form, for example. In the primary room, indoors, I like to allow them to record themselves a lot. It gives them a sense of ownership. It makes them feel like they've created something, and it also gives you something cool to share with the parents. For me, I'm teaching at a US school, and one of their standard groups includes feedback in developing their own criteria for what's good and what's not. Having them being able to record themselves is a really useful tool for doing that. Likewise, when I've had students doing blended learning where I've got some in person and some at home, I've actually had them play along with us. Now, this isn't ideal, but let's say there are strings and they're playing any string instrument, really. Some of these you have to get the premium for, but let's say they could use the string section. And you can actually have them play along with some of your warm-ups. You can have them play along with your group. They can be reading their music, and this can be a great opportunity for them to actually learn where those notes live on the piano. And it also can give them an opportunity to experiment with some of the other sounds. You can switch octaves here. This is also great I used this in our secondary band class when we were all at home, where and they had a paid version. My school had purchased it. Right now, what I'm showing you is the free version, where we actually had them set up their entire piece of music here. We had them set up a piece of music. We even had them establish some meter changes, like when the time signature would change. I even taught them how to add automation so that they could change the tempo to add crescendos into their music. And then when you set the tempo, maybe you set the time signature as 3/4. And then you set your tempo at, let's say, 90 beats per minute. You can see each measure and each beat of each measure. So I actually had them taking their parts, transposing them to concert pitch, going in and adding a track, pulling up brass and woodwinds, the clarinet, for example, and then playing their part. checking to make sure it lined up measure by measure. And then the best part about Soundtrap is it's cloud-based and it's shareable. So once they had created their entire part, you can have them actually come into one room. Everyone can insert their part each section, and then it works together with a MIDI recording of that piece. There's lots of possibilities with Soundtrap. Okay, going on to the next one is called BandLab. So let me pull up my BandLab. BandLab is completely free. There is no premium or paid version. It's all completely free. And the students will have to create a login. And you click on create. And it's essentially another type of DAW. It doesn't have a lot of, it has winds, brass, woodwinds. You can do a lot of the same things we talked about in Soundtrap with this as well. But the one difference between this and Soundtrap, not only is this free, and not only does it have all the instruments free, but when you go to add new track, there's a sampler here. And I've done some really cool activities, both in in-person learning when students have devices. If you're doing chamber music or sectionals, you can actually have your students use this sampler. When you're doing at-home learning, you can have them use this sampler as well. Let me show you how it works. For those of you that don't know what a sampler is, a sampler is where you can take each one of these buttons and record a different sound with them. Some samplers are physical machines where you may have a controller that has these physical buttons on it. But I'll show you how it works. So you can go la, 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 cat, cat, tss, 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 tss. And then you can play them. Cat, cat, cat. So I'm thinking of a beginning band scenario where your students are learning their first 5 notes. They have their instruments, but you're doing digital online learning. You have the students record their first 5 notes into the sampler. So let me delete them. C, D, E, F, G. You have them record their first 5 notes. Then you have a couple students share their sound. Let me hear it. T. Then you might say, oh, you need to firm your lips and use more air. Let's record this one again. E, D, E. You can give them feedback. E, E. Okay, you can give them feedback on their playing. Then you can tell them, okay, now can you compose a melody with these notes? And they might do E, 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 C. Then you might say, can you play the melody that you wrote? You choose a couple students, you have them play their recorded melody. E, 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 C. You have them play it for you. E, E. Then you have them actually play it with their instruments. So this, and when you're in sectionals with if you're in-person learning, we're doing some small group stuff, you can do the same thing. With my primary students, we actually have them take their devices around the school. And we did a provocation where I had them ask themselves, and this is for in-person or online learning, what sounds do you hear at school? And they made a list of all these sounds. And then we went around recording the sounds. and the students were able to take the rhythms that they learned and make a composition using tika tika. I use tika tika for counting 16th notes, and make a short composition using rhythms, and they're able to assign sounds to these rhythms and then use their devices and use this sampler to make a rhythmic composition using these. So that's my favorite feature of BandLab, on top of the fact that it's all free. All right, my next tool is Noteflight. Noteflight, I've seen, is also popular in some of the Facebook groups. But Noteflight is simply a music notation tool, similar to Finale or Sibelius, but it is free. You can have your students go over to Create, and it'll bring them to this field. They have the keyboard where they can input notes, kind of like the smart tools on Finale. You can delete the staves, or the staves. You can subtract measures. You can add measures before. You can delete measures. You can add dynamics. You can add repeats. You can add forte there. You can move these just like that. And this is a great introduction to getting your students to start composing. Okay, great implications for online learning. A lot of us did some composition activities during online learning. One thing that I recently used is we had students using, let's go back to our beginning band or orchestra or even choir scenario, where they learn their first 5 notes, do, re, mi, fa, sol, and they can play whole notes, half notes, quarter notes, and eighth notes. You have them improvise using just the rhythms they know and the notes they know. And then since they know all those rhythms, they know all those notes, you can have them record themselves right in here. Then you can have them actually transcribe their improvisations. And this is a great way to get them playing, get them recording so you can hear it, and then get them composing by actually notating it. So the opportunities with this are endless. You can export parts. You can have the score. You can add parts here. Whoops. You can add different parts. You could do a lot with this. And then it's all cloud-based. They can save. They can export to PDF. They can export to MIDI. They can export the audio. They can even open this up in Soundtrap as well if you have them using that. Okay. So that was just a brief introduction to Noteflight. Most of you music teachers know how those work. Next, we have here are a different collection of virtual instruments that I've used in blended learning to help students play along with us. Some of them are better than others, but they are great at the primary level, and we'll go through some of them here. So this website, virtualmusicinstruments.com, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave a link, all these links in the description of this so you can see them. And there's virtual drum sets that are also clickable with the keyboard. You can press the buttons and work on it. They've got virtual piano that your students can play with at home. Maybe in a primary lesson, you introduce the keyboard to them and you have them playing some simple melodies. They've got a virtual pan flute. I have used this and have students play along with us while we're playing recorder. And it was a great task for them to have to find the notes because they're not set up quite the same. There's virtual xylophones. This works well for your ORF classrooms. Also, if they're playing along with in-person people, because this virtual instrument is click sensitive. They can play as fast as they click. Recently, I have students at home with no recorders that were able to play hot cross buns with us while clicking along. And then I was able to pass them off for recorder karate, and I still gave them a belt because of that. Okay, that one's pretty straightforward. The next one we have here, now these are from Music K8, which is, I think that's pretty popular. I think they actually publish a curriculum too that you can use, and that's why some of these resources are made. This is an interactive recorder. It doesn't work for them playing along with us, but it's a cool interactive fingering chart where if you have a how the playing overlaps with the two different notes, but it's just another really cool, useful tool. They also have boom whackers. This For example, in my second grade class, we're learning solfege, and then we're using Chrome Music Lab to create melodies and then have the students play with them on their boom whackers and handbells. The colors almost perfectly line up. And you can actually have your students at home playing along with you. We also watch a lot of those boom whacker play along videos, and your students can fully participate with that, with this. Okay. And I have a fourth grade class that's learning ukulele. And this is a cool ukulele, virtual ukulele. You can play open strings on it. You can change the tuning of your ukulele. You can have it strum for you if you put a chord like C, for example. You can have it strum. And it gives you some different patterns. It also shows the fingering. So if you're playing individual notes, the students can play individual notes. And I've had students be able to play along with us. When we're learning a chord, I can have them find that chord, for example. Okay, and then they can play open string melodies along with the class. They can learn chords. Now, there's some different ukulele tunings, and you can actually change them between soprano or standard ukulele tuning. You can have them change that here with whatever they're using. Okay, and you can have them play a lefty if that's something that you do. Okay, and you can have them, right now they're doing standard. You can have them switch to concert tuning. You can have them switch over to baritone ukulele. Really cool tool to keep you engaged during virtual learning. Blended learning, great provocation. Really some great tools. And last but not least, my favorite digital tool for the music classroom is CommonTime Online. CommonTime is your home for booking artists across the disciplines of theater, dance, music, and visual arts. When you have in person learners or at home learners, you could bring in Roddy, for example, and have him come in and play an amazing clarinet recital for you. Or you can have him come in to work with your students, or you can have him come in to do sectionals. You can have him come in for an instrument petting zoo with your beginners. When you're doing virtual learning and you have your students at home with or without instruments, you can have a section of your students go into a session with Roddy and have a little section. Maybe your beginners are at home. You can have them introduced to this instrument via a session with Roddy from the United States. But maybe you're looking for a more international experience. You could have Han Chong come in with virtual learning or in-person learning and give an improv theater class while also teaching your students Chinese at the same time, or Slovak, or English if you're working with students that are not English speakers. The possibilities here are English. CommonTime Online gives you access to world-class teaching artists from all around the world across disciplines that include music, all facets of music, all types of dance, ballet, contemporary, improv, choreography, choral music, painting, other types of visual art, as well as drama and dance. And you can have these international superstars come in working with your students. If you are interested in how to use guest artists in your classroom, you can check out the Benefits of Guest Artists in the Classroom blog that is under the blog tab, where we have tons of educational resources here, including webinars just like this one, interviews with some of the people in our field that are making it happen, and so forth. Bringing in a guest artist into your classroom not only provides an amazing content description, an amazing cultural connection that truly gives your students global context, and just an amazing, engaging experience that allows them to put a face and a name to what they're learning. But this is doable whether you're learning virtually or in person. CommonTime Online by far is my favorite digital tool for learning in the music room. And you, if you're listening to this, should definitely check that out today. Not only can you book artists to come in and see your students and work with your students, for, like I said, performances, sectionals, masterclass, instrument petting zoo, workshop, provocations, introductions, help, language teaching. We're a multilingual platform. We also have several arts organizations that are live streaming and hosting pre-recorded content as well. For example, the Domenico Savino Music Association out in Italy is live streaming Beethoven's Ninth Symphony for just $10 on February 20th. Imagine your students getting the opportunity to see this landmark piece performed live all the way in Italy, or even watching Madame Butterfly, learning about opera on March the 26th and the 27th. CommonTime Online is definitely a go-to resource for you if you are interested in engaging learners through insightful, enlightening, engaging virtual learning experiences. Whether you are an artist looking to be empowered and share your craft on our booking service with the world, or whether your school or your arts organization is looking for a unique fundraising opportunity, or just looking to expand your in-person offerings to include the rest of the world via the internet, we've got you covered. CommonTime Online, your digital home for the arts. So with that, Ms. Sandra, thank you for joining. This will be posted in its entirety along with all the links we discussed today on our blog, right up here if you're looking at it at the blog tab. And I hope you music teachers out there can start using some of these digital tools in your classrooms today. Thank you.